Take a deep breath, because there are betrayals that hurt, and then there are the ones that shatter everything you believed was real. Clara had always been proud of the life she built. It wasn't perfect, but it was stable. After years of raising her daughter alone, facing struggles and sacrificing so much, she finally felt like she had reached a calmer place. Julia, her daughter, was 19, smart, independent, and above all, always her companion. They had a close relationship built on trust, honesty, and respect. At least, that's what Clara believed. When Daniel came into their lives, everything seemed to fall into place. He was polite, charming, easy to talk to. He treated Clara with care and seemed to respect her space. But what stood out the most was the way he connected with Julia. At first, Clara saw it as something positive. After all, not every man is comfortable with a daughter in the picture. But Daniel seemed different. He talked with her, laughed, showed interest, and that made Clara lower her guard. Because when you believe everything is fine, you stop paying attention. Months went by, and small changes started to appear. Nothing obvious, nothing you could point at with certainty, but enough to create discomfort. Julia began to withdraw. She stopped sharing simple things about her day, spent more time in her room, more time on her phone. Daniel, on the other hand, started acting differently too. Mood swings, moments of distraction, vague answers. But every time Clara questioned him, there was always a quick response, convincing enough to push away any suspicion. And that's how many betrayals hide, not in big mistakes, but in small details that on their own seem insignificant. Clara tried to ignore it, told herself she was overthinking, that it was all in her head, because accepting the possibility that something was wrong meant opening a door she didn't want to open. But intuition, when it insists, is rarely wrong. And then came the moment that changed everything. It wasn't planned, it wasn't expected, it was an accident. Daniel had left his phone on the table and stepped outside to take a call. Clara wasn't the type to go through his things. She never needed to. Trust had always been enough. But that day, something made her look. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was that feeling that had been growing for weeks. And then a notification appeared. A name, a short message, simple, but carrying something strange. Her heart started racing. Her hands turned cold. And without meaning to, she opened the conversation. And in that instant, her world stopped. There was no doubt, no room for interpretation. It was clear. Intimate messages, hidden conversations, and the name was her own daughter's name, Julia. The impact was immediate, as if the air had been ripped from her lungs. Clara couldn't think, couldn't react. She just stared at the screen, searching for a mistake, some explanation that wasn't that. But there wasn't one. It was real. And the more she read, the worse it became. This wasn't recent. It wasn't a one-time mistake. It had been going on for a while. And in that moment, the pain wasn't just betrayal. It was destruction. Because what was breaking there wasn't just a relationship. It was a family, a trust built over years. And maybe what hurt the most was realizing it had all happened right in front of her without her noticing. But what came next was even more surprising. Clara didn't scream. She didn't confront them right away. She didn't make a scene. She went silent. A deep, dangerous silence. Because in that moment, the pain started to turn into something else. Control, coldness, decision. She closed the phone, placed it exactly where it had been, and acted like nothing had happened. And that's when everything changed. Because now she knew. And knowing changes the way you see every detail. In the days that followed, Clara began to observe. Every look, every interrupted conversation, every excuse that didn't quite make sense, and everything started to fall into place. Every small detail that once felt strange now became a piece of a puzzle that was finally complete. And the more she observed, the more the pain grew. But along with the pain, something stronger emerged. Certainty. Certainty that it had to end. But not just anyway, not with shouting, not with chaos. Clara wanted more than that. She wanted them to feel it, to understand, to face the consequences of what they had done. And so she started planning, in silence. She chose the right moment, the right place, the moment where there would be no escape. And during that time, she had to live with both of them, pretend, smile, act normal. And maybe that was the hardest part of all, because living with a lie while knowing the truth requires a strength very few people have. Until the day came. Everything was ready. Clara called them both for a conversation. No suspicion, just said she needed to talk. When the three of them were in the room, the atmosphere was already heavy. Julia avoided eye contact. Daniel looked uncomfortable. And then Clara began. Not with accusations, but with questions. Simple, direct. And as they answered, she just watched. Until at the right moment, she revealed everything. Showed what she knew, said what she saw. And the silence that followed was crushing. Julia started crying. Daniel tried to speak, tried to explain, tried to find words. But there were no words that could fix it, because some actions have no defense. Clara didn't raise her voice. She didn't lose control. And that's what made it even more powerful, because her calm was stronger than any explosion. And then came the decisions. Clara looked at Daniel and firmly told him to leave. Right then. No discussion, no negotiation. And he left, without arguments, without looking back, because he knew there was nothing left to say. With Julia, it was different, harder, deeper, because that wasn't just betrayal. It was history. It was a bond, a lifetime built together. Clara didn't say much, but every word was precise. She said the trust was broken, that it would take time, that nothing would be the same, and that now it was up to Julia to decide who she wanted to become after that mistake. The days that followed were silent. The house felt different, emptier, colder, but at the same time more real, because the lie was gone. And slowly, Clara began to rebuild herself, step by step, without a rush, understanding that not everything can be fixed, but many things can be rebuilt. Her relationship with her daughter didn't go back to what it was, but it started a new process, difficult, painful, but real. Because rebuilding takes time, it requires effort, it requires change. And today, Clara understands something she didn't before, that some people come into our lives to teach us, even in the worst possible way, that trust is too valuable to ignore, and that in the end, choosing herself was the most important decision she could have made. Because sometimes, true strength isn't about fighting for someone, it's about knowing when to stop fighting. Now, tell me, if you were in her place, what would you do? Because the truth is simple. Not every betrayal deserves forgiveness, but every pain can become strength.